I will be honest, the episode was not that good. It is a transitional one, but even so, it left one or two interesting things to speculate about, especially if you know the light novels involving the characters in this episode. And you know that I know the novels, all of them. So stay until the end, and I will tell you some possible interesting revelations that came out today about Tiga and Pandora. But before starting, a thank you to the members of my Spanish channel. Thanks to Faso God, the guy with the Virgil profile picture, Yume, Santiago, Cursed, Juan, Lazarino, Mexicosis, Yeon, and finally Kurai. There are no new members on the English channel, but thanks to the regulars anyway. Finally, for this occasion, I thank the nearly 400 people who followed me on Instagram. It means a lot to me considering they took the trouble to close the app and go over there to follow me. Thank you very much to everyone. But now let us start with the video. Welcome to the analysis of Chapter 26 of Arc 10 of ReZero. But before starting, let me quickly walk you through the episode.
Do you know that in the last episode of the novel, a very tense moment happened between Reinhardt and his father? Basically, it is the first meeting they had after Heinkel threatened his lady in Pristella. Now, I will narrate almost everything that happened in the chapter.
The chapter begins in the Church of the Divine Dragon, where the impulsive Philaret tries to fix the backlog of an urgent medicine shipment caused by the terrible chaos in the streets of the capital, resulting from the supposed betrayal of Krush and Subaru against the kingdom. Thanks to Heinkel's pragmatic intervention, the problem is solved effectively by redirecting resources and proposing to transfer patients directly to the treatment centers in the south and west. It is also narrated how Heinkel tries to give all the credit to his lady, since if it is he who suggests certain measures, public opinion will not look favorably on that decision. And faced with this suggestion, Philaret tells him she will not allow him to keep thinking that way, reminding him that he is also a valuable member of the faction. It is also revealed that despite the constant efforts of Philaret and her brilliant officer Sakura to send more than 100 formal requests to the Council of Sages to visit the prisoners and apply the healing sacrament to the victims of Pristella, the royal castle remains unyielding, rejecting every advance and keeping Emilia and Felt completely cut off from the outside world. The situation becomes emotionally unbearable when the tensest moment of the episode happens. During a diplomatic visit to the castle, the group runs face-to-face with Reinhard van Estrella in the hallways, who was accompanied by two knights that Heinkel swears he had never seen and deduces that they are knights keeping the Sword Saint watched. Then Philor interrogates him harshly, rebuking him that, despite theoretically being Felt's knight, he hasn't even been allowed to see her in over a month of unjust confinement. Reinhard responds with heartbreaking stoicism that he is first and foremost the sword of the kingdom and that he must blindly obey superior orders, refusing to deliver any letter or message of support to Felt. Before leaving, the Sword Saint crosses paths with his father and congratulates him with total sincerity for having become Philaret's knight, leaving Heinkel completely mute and shattered by guilt at not knowing how to react to his son's unshakable attitude. Back at the church, after momentarily dismissing her guards and advisors, Philaret slumps against the closed door with an expression of absolute frustration upon seeing that the official channels of law and diplomacy have completely closed for them. Breaking the silence with a proposal as dangerous as it is bold, the young candidate stares at Heinkel and asks him how they could successfully carry out a clandestine breakout to get the prisoners out of the castle, connecting in this way with the final chapter of the latest volume of the light novel, where we see that Philaret and Heinkel offer Felt a chance to escape together with Emilia. The episode starts with Philaret talking to a stranger and Heinkel about the problem of medicine distribution due to the chaotic state of the capital from recent events, and this discussion would end when Heinkel suggests they should only take medicine to the hospital for the sickest patients. As for the rest of the non-serious patients, he suggests they should be transferred to the place of the bottleneck to give them the necessary medical attention. This actually takes up several pages, but if I narrated it this quickly, it is not just because I am behind with the video, but because the author uses these situations to show us how things are done in Philaret's faction. While in Emilia's faction, it is Subaru who has to give the general suggestions and establish the action plan, which is then approved by Emilia. In Philaret's faction, it is both Heinkel and Philaret who decide the course of the decisions. In fact, one detail that I loved, even though I feel it is a bit forced, is how Heinkel narrates that he already had experience with certain things from the church and with medicines. It is revealed that when his wife fell ill, he took it upon himself to find out all the available medicines he could use to help her. And not only that, but he also started attending the church in search of a miracle for her. Details like this make me understand how much this man loves his wife. While I do not deny that it is believable to me that the man would do that kind of thing out of love, what I do find a bit hard to believe is the connection the author shows us that Heinkel had in the past with the Divine Dragon Church, a church that he now supports and even has a uniform from. I say it is forced because in all the side stories of Heinkel that I read, it is never mentioned that Heinkel went to the church, or that he even went there, but many attempts he made to cure his wife are mentioned. It is actually because of those attempts that he meets Felix's late teacher, or it is because of those attempts that one day he accidentally went to investigate a Metia in an abandoned place, and it would be that place where he would meet Priscilla and join her faction. But it is never talked about in the side stories about Heinkel going to the church, and for the author to try to drop this fact recently leaves me with a somewhat strange aftertaste. Still, I would like the author to soon release a side story, or something where they narrate a little bit about what those days were like. The days when he went to the church to pray and ask for a miracle for his wife. At least that way I feel the connection would be more natural when someone reads all of Heinkel's novels in a few years, and then reads the main novel. Then there would be an interesting talk, although I already said that the dynamic between Heinkel and Filare is that one self-deprecates while the other encourages her by reminding him that he can still be a good person. Today we saw a little more of how this dynamic develops. I must admit I like how Heinkel says, "It is better if the ideas he suggests for the campaign are announced by Filore as her own ideas, since if they gave credit to Heinkel, this would bring a bad reputation to the decisions." But Filore, being the sweet girl she is, tells him that although she is aware of his bad reputation, still his past actions should not tarnish the good deeds of the present, and that when she is a monarch, they will be together in more situations like this. She basically told him to stop acting that way, but of course she did it in her own way while pinching herself and talking in her usual mannerisms. These descriptions seem weird and unnecessary, but when you read it, you realize how that action is something typical of her. Something that catches my attention a lot about this dialogue between the characters is the part where Filore holds her arguments by saying that perhaps there was a life saved thanks to him. This small and isolated reflection makes me believe that perhaps the idealization Filore has of Heinkel is due to something that happened in the past. Whether Heinkel once saved a little girl when he was a knight, or perhaps the fact that he absorbed dragon blood almost 15 years ago, this action perhaps had a trigger in the current Filore. And just as Subaru saved Melty from Capella by an unexpected action, perhaps Heinkel did the same with the other part of Melty, Filore. I like to believe in that parallelism, not only because of the narrative resemblance of Filore and Melty, but also because they were saved by two equally similar characters, Heinkel and Subaru. But let us see if I guess right. Then there is one or two more dialogues between Filore and Heinkel, but it all boils down to the fact that Heinkel does not want to be put in the category of a person who does good without looking at who receives it, yet he decides he will help his lady in her daily duties. After that, we have one of the moments I consider the most important of the episode. I am talking about the scene where Tiga and Heinkel talk. It is also that scene I used for the video thumbnail. There it is narrated a bit how tense their relationship is. It seems that at all times Tiga talks with hatred about Heinkel, but in the end an interesting twist happens that lets us see how wrong we were. It turns out it is not that Tiga hates Heinkel, and that is why he has a passive-aggressive attitude toward him, but rather if he is really like that, it is because Tiga feels empathy for him. Although the work never says why he feels this empathy, it can be deduced that it must be for something from his past. Do you remember that Melty and the Throne of the Prophecy game have already given hints that Tiga is controlled by Capella? Well, it is logical to think that due to the turbulent and unfortunate past Tiga has, he cannot help feeling some pity for Heinkel. Then both men talk about recent events. They talk about how Filore's problematic personality is, how Tiga does not seem like a knight but a warrior, and how the capital is tense because of Krush and Subaru's recent actions. It is not worth talking in detail about the recap of this, but what is worth commenting on is that Heinkel realizes that all these events are enormously helping the Divine Dragon Church, who take advantage of the chaos and uncertainty of a capital ruled by a few rich people, but immense poor people, to campaign and increase Filore's popularity. Heinkel is happy that Filore gets more support every day, but he cannot help feeling a gradual mistrust toward the church, and we as readers know he has reason to suspect. Then another thing that is narrated is how Heinkel believes he is right in his mistrust toward the church. For this he recaps all the social factors that enhance the importance of belief in this organization. He gives reasons like the abundant poverty in Lugunica and how every day the church gets more followers thanks to Filore's good campaign. On top of that, to complicate his doubts, he realizes that Filore in her daily actions has a unique charisma. That charisma is a trait that only descendants of the royal family had. It is based on all this that Heinkel gives a reflection that helps erase a possibility that some users were commenting on. The possibility that Filore and Felt are sisters. This is something that is instantly ruled out by Heinkel, and the reason for this is a reason that was added in the light novel of the previous volume. It is said that Ford Lugunica, the father of the princess who disappeared 15 years ago, came to consider Heinkel his best friend, and it is because of this relationship that Heinkel knows there was only a single princess. The truth is, this revelation of Ford Lugunica being his former best friend is not something to be taken lightly, since in volume 44 Heinkel thinks about that prince, and it went like this.
Suddenly, the warm words Ford had once spoken to him with a smile came back to mind. He had assured him that his wish would one day come true, for aside from his own older brother, he had never known anyone who faced another person's dreams with such unwavering sincerity and determination. Though their positions were worlds apart, and calling him a friend would have been far too presumptuous, Heinkel realized in that moment that they were kindred spirits, both burdened by struggles born from the heavy expectations placed upon them. He had seen that same reflection in the crimson eyes now fixed upon him, confirming the cruel truth revealed. The instant gluttony's power was unleashed, that she was, without a doubt, Filore Lugunica. And yet, despite everything, the situation remained shrouded in uncertainty.
The most curious thing is that despite all these suspicions, Heinkel keeps wondering what he should do. And thus it is said, 1 month passed. Now only 1 more month is left for us to return to the starting point of the time skip. After this, we would change scenes, and it is also made clear that more days have passed. Now we see a dialogue between Sakura and Heinkel. I really liked this dialogue, and that is because I feel the hints they threw at each other were really interesting. If you know Heinkel's background, it is said that Sakura was writing letters every day ordered by Filore to deliver to the Council of Sages and the Church High Command. Even so, these two organizations postponed her request to go heal the victims of Pristella and to grant her a meeting with Amelia and Felt, who were still detained. There, Heinkel seems to suggest to Sakura that perhaps she was not doing her job well, and that she was there by nepotism in her role as administrative assistant of the church and Filore, to which Sakura tells him that if that were the case, then he also got his job as vice commander of the Royal Guard by the same method. And while this seems to be true, it actually is not. Heinkel did not get his role as vice commander by nepotism, but rather he was given the role due to some problems that happened in a side story, and it was given as compensation. But that is a secret of the secret organization of the Six Tongues, so it is normal that Sakura does not know it. Then they comment a bit among themselves about the role of being a saint, a role that Filore plays. It is said how this role is not so important to the internal structure of the church despite being its public face. They delve a bit deeper into the role, but it is not a big deal. I think the only thing I have expectations for regarding this role is that in the future, it will serve to explain a bit more about Pandora in retrospect. How will Filore's role serve to explain Pandora's ancient role? Well, we have proof that Pandora was called a saint 400 years ago, and that currently there is another with that same role. Well, it draws some attention. Something that is just a theory, but a probable theory, is the fact that it seems history in ReZero is cyclical. Although most fans know that elves are currently hated for what the Witch of Envy did 400 years prior, actually, 400 years ago Ryuzu and her people already suffered discrimination, and that is why they took refuge in Echidna's sanctuary. That is, there was already a reason why people hated elves before Satella. Even the what-if that happens 400 years later gives us another clue that history in ReZero is cyclical. There it is shown to us how a new witch arose out of love for Natsuki Subaru, just like Satella arose in the past. What am I getting at with this? That I like to believe that possibly through Filore's current situation we will find an answer to what Pandora's life was like 400 years ago, when she was still a girl who had not taken the gene of the Witch of Vainglory. Then something happens that I feel finally splashes Filore's faction a bit. And while we know it can perfectly be a planned way so they are not suspected, I consider it a good way to drag things out and confuse the reader and the characters. It is said that Filore is also in a bad political situation because she used the sacrament to heal Krush, who later ended up killing Miklotov, and that she might even lose her role as saint due to this unilateral decision. After this, another scene change happens again, one where we are located days later. Since Filore's letters were rejected, she showed up at the castle to make the request in person, but they still rejected her. Facing so many obstacles, everyone deduces that those on the Council of Sages only want Filore to give up on continuing with that plan. And here comes the most complex part of the episode. And for the reader, if really everything is a plot for Filore to win easily, then why don't those on the Council of Sages and the Church approve the request to go save the victims of Pristella, and thus boost Filore's candidacy? What I imagine happens is that simply the high commands do not want to leave their safe zone in the capital until they have taken care of loose ends. That is, Subaru, Russell, and company. I hope we have answers soon. After this, the tense reunion between Heinkel and Reinhard would happen. There is not much to say about this. Only Reinhard congratulates Heinkel, and due to how unexpected the congratulations is, Heinkel does not even have time to insult him back. He just thinks about why he congratulates him genuinely if he has only given him problems recently. I did not think I would say this, but the most interesting part comes when Heinkel states that there were two unknown knights watching Reinhard the whole time. The implications of this are big, because Heinkel is someone who has lived his whole life surrounded by knights and in the kingdom's cavalry, and yet for even him not to recognize the knights accompanying Reinhard is just another proof that they are fake people sent by the mastermind behind all of this. Another interesting exchange is the one between Feagoni and Reinhard, one where basically Feagoni tells him it is unacceptable that they do not even let him get close to Felt. The truth is, this moment is tense to read, but it only serves to show us that Reinhard is just a hero and nothing more, a hero who is expected to do the right things, and it is curious how it never crosses his mind to even put his own desires first. Of course I know that is something noble, but I think it is fine if we have some greed from time to time. Just a little bit, since no one here wants to end up like Regulus. Then the episode would end with Heinkel and Feagoni talking in private, and the candidate proposes a breakout from the castle, thus connecting everything with the epilogue of the latest volume. Honestly, I did not like the episode that much. This start of the volume is in charge of connecting and telling the things that have happened in these 2 months of inactivity by the good side. I would like to say that this recount of events will end soon, but I see it as unlikely. Something tells me we will also have a narration from the good guy's point of view, and there we will be explained all the difficulties that came up and prevented them from retaking the capital. I do not want to sound pessimistic, and hopefully I am wrong, but the situation of volume 32 might repeat itself. In case you do not know it and stated quickly, in that volume, we were also left with the intrigue of what happened to Subaru, who was missing due to the events of the Colosseum, and while he was absent from the story, the novel told us the point of view of the other characters, and only at the very last page of volume 32 did Subaru appear again. The truth is, right now I do not know if I would like that to repeat, but hopefully it does not happen. Before finishing, I want to thank the Reinhard fan who donated $1,000 to make a video about the entire complete life of the hero. I want to finish Shaula's video first, and as soon as that is done, I will start his video, which will be much longer than Elsa's. But let me sweeten the goal a bit more. If $1,500 is reached, I will narrate the video in a Reinhard cosplay. Will it be reached? We will see. But while I was editing this, the new episode of the novel came out, and since I have to make other videos, I am sorry to say that for this occasion, I will only upload the script with some gameplay in the background. But while I was editing this, the new episode of the novel came out, and since I have to make other videos, I am sorry to say that for this occasion, I will only upload the script with some gameplay in the background. But now let us start with episode 27. Generally here I would put the summary of today's episode, but for now I will not do it. I can tell you the episode was not that interesting. The most surprising thing happened at the end, and that is definitely something that gave me hype, but let me share my thoughts on this chapter with you. The episode starts with Feagoni and Heinkel talking about what the escape plan would be like. Here I honestly must admit that Feagoni surprised me, as it is revealed she had made a detailed map of the guard and watch rotations, doing it so she could use this information to rescue Amelia and Felt. Of course Heinkel tried to make her see reason, but Feagoni tells him that she already showed him her determination in the past, and adds that she wants to live based on her words, which is why she plans this. Something that moved me a lot, and I am not joking, is how Feagoni states that even if the church and the kingdom turn their backs on her for this act, she will still have her knight Heinkel, and that is reason enough for the knight to help her. Honestly, this dynamic between Feagoni and Heinkel is very sweet, since she trusts him completely, and it is even sweeter when we realize that Heinkel was the best friend of her supposed father, Ford Lagunica. I mean, right now, Heinkel is like a sort of uncle to Feagoni, and that adds a lot of points to the trust in their relationship. Then Heinkel surprisingly becomes the voice of reason and proposes a better plan to infiltrate the castle, not without first reminding her of all the risks she is not considering. But that does not stop Feagoni, who decides to go ahead with her plan anyway. I know I said all of this very summarized here, but believe me, when you read the novel you will see that the description and chemistry of Heinkel with her is very adorable, and summarizing it loses the essence a little bit. So it is better if you read it on your own. And that is how the first scene of the episode would end. Then we are just told how 45 days have passed since Felt and Amelia were imprisoned, at the same time that another 15 days pass planning the escape. Nothing really relevant is said, at least not something I have to supplement with information from the novels, but Zeol is mentioned. If you do not remember who Zeol is, he is the knight who tried to stop Subaru at the capital's checkpoints. Heinkel gives us a bit more context about him, saying that Zeol is a bastard who is not very good with the sword and who always tries to rely on his family's reputation instead of his fencing skill, and because of this similarity with him, it seems he dislikes him. I clarified that there are more things going on while I summarize this. Things like the small actions Filare took to make sure she threw others off and kept her lie from leaking, doing all this while letting Heinkel handle the information gathering. Honestly, I know I said in my other videos that I thought all of this was a trap by Filore, but now that we know it was actually Heinkel who formulated the whole escape plan, I cannot help feeling that maybe Filore really did not have bad intentions, or maybe she did. Who knows? Personally, even I doubt that. Although I cannot help raising an eyebrow a little when the episode reveals that every time the day of the escape got closer, Filore felt more excited while Heinkel felt more nervous. Hopefully Filore's excitement is because she wants everything to go well and not because her plan will put Amelia and Felt in a tight spot. Another interesting thing mentioned is how it is emphasized once again that this is the second time Heinkel is infiltrating the royal castle, as a reference to when he infiltrated on the night the princess was kidnapped 15 years ago. After presenting another request for an audience with Amelia and Felt, Heinkel and Filore infiltrate the east wing of the castle. There it is told how Heinkel defeats Zeol and his companion, but nothing truly relevant is mentioned. I think they just give us more tender moments of Heinkel and Filore. In fact, the latter is amazed at the ease with which Heinkel defeated the two remaining knights. If only Filore knew that the only two victories Heinkel has in the entire main series were against the sex god Camberley and two random soldiers. If she knew that, I wonder what she would think. Although knowing Filore's fangirl side, I am sure she would still find a way to excuse him. Then they arrive at Felt's confinement room where the dialogue from the epilogue of the past volume is repeated. The only new thing is that now Felt asks about her knight and if he is helping with the plan, to which Heinkel denies it, and the candidate sounds neither disappointed nor sad. She just says they must get out as soon as possible, while not losing her usual sparkle. Here an interesting reflection happens on Heinkel's part, about the type of relationship his son has with Felt. It seems to him that it always felt like Reinhard was the one who chose Felt as a lady to serve, but now he thinks maybe it was the other way around. Then when it seems he reaches an interesting conclusion because of this, he is interrupted by Filore and we are left without knowing what conclusion Heinkel had reached. What I will say now is my own speculation, but I think maybe Heinkel ended up comparing the relationship of Felt and her knight with the relationship Teresia and Wilhelm had. From this latter relationship, it could also be said that Teresia chose Wilhelm, and I imagine that is what went through Heinkel's head. Sort of like this is backed up when he later says he usually thinks about unnecessary things in moments like that. Besides, I already said that Tape does not hide his intention to make Reinhard and Felt end up as a couple. So personally, that is what I think Heinkel ended up thinking. Then the newly formed group prepares to go to the upper floor, where they have Amelia captive. It is mentioned that the place keeping Amelia locked up has magic formulas to prevent her from using her magic, and I imagine Ram is also there. But when they arrive at the place, the guards are not there, but rather Marcos Gildark, who instantly prevents Heinkel from using his sword and asks him what he is doing here. Honestly, this last scene has me very confused, more than anything because of all the possibilities that can happen at this moment. And do not worry, I will mention all the ones I have in mind. First of all, Marcos is fiendishly strong. Sure, I know next to Reinhard he does not seem like a big deal, but Marcos has managed to defeat Roswal in combat, and I know Roswal later manages to beat him in the rematch, but nobody can take away the feat of defeating a 400-year-old mage. Also in another side story, we see how Marcos faces 3 strong people from Wallachia. I know in the image I show there are only 2, but I remember that in that novel, it was mentioned there was a sniper providing cover to the 2 combatants in the image, and if I remember correctly, he faced them even when he did not yet possess that armor that reinforced his durability in combat so much more. In fact, it is at the end of that side story that Marcus gets the armor as a courtesy from Roswal. And now, in the present we have Marcus stronger than ever against an Heinkel who is immortal. Honestly, I have no idea what Heinkel can do against him, and while I am aware that Heinkel can use his immortality to try to come up with something against him, it is also true we have already seen he can get knocked out if he is hit hard, and believe me, Marcus can deal one of those hits at any moment. There might also be the option that Marcus is collaborating with the secret organization of the Six Tongues, but something made clear in side stories is that Marcus is not an active member of this organization. He is just an acquaintance and occasional collaborator, so it is not very easy to try to guess if Marcus is an ally of Russell right now or not. Personally, I like to believe that yes, Marcus is aware of everything and is just pretending to serve the current administration while waiting for an opportunity to retake the capital. I know Capella has been replacing key people of the kingdom with her own puppets, but I think it would be foolish to replace Marcus, because if he is strong, it is precisely because Marcus is Marcus, and I very much doubt an imposter could match his strength. Something that catches my attention a lot is that Heinkel says that according to his investigations, he expected to find guards at the place, which means that at the last minute, something happened that forced Marcus to go guard the area personally. Could it be that it was just a coincidence, or is it that someone like Philor leaked information to the enemy? Personally, I must say I would be very surprised to know Marcus is at the service of Capella's administration. Sure, I said earlier he did not have close collaboration with the secret organization of the Six Tongues, but he did have a very, very close relationship with a member of this group, a member he considers like a sort of younger brother. In fact, in a side story where this younger brother put himself in grave danger to save Julius, we see a nice conversation between Marcus and Belmont, where the affection and respect they have for each other is shown. And it happened like this.
When he heard that old nickname being called from behind, Belmont stopped and turned around. The moment he recognized the face of the man calling him, he couldn't help but smile. Belmont told the commander that he hadn't changed at all, wondering if 10 years had really passed. Walking toward him with heavy steps, Marcos replied that Belmont still had the same cheeky face as ever and asked if he had been eating well. Belmont answered that the commander looked exactly the same too, except he had started talking like an old man, jokingly asking if he had always been like that. The giant simply told him to shut up. The man standing before him was Marcos, an old friend Belmont hadn't seen in 10 years. Even though they had been apart for so long, Belmont constantly heard news about him. Part of it was because of Marcos's incredible achievements, but mostly because of his political importance. Known as the Rock Gildark, Marcos was one of the key figures keeping the kingdom of Lugunica stable. Because of that, Belmont's organization, the kingdom's intelligence agency known as the Six Tongues, closely monitored all of his movements. Even so, Belmont never disliked him. Ever since their days in the Brotherhood, he had always liked this kind-hearted giant, an honest man who could never lie and specialized in direct combat. Looking at him, Belmont couldn't help thinking about how quickly time had passed. The man who had once been called Commander had actually become a real commander. Marcos laughed and said that even little Bell, the kid he used to know, had grown into a full-grown man. He then asked about the rest of their old friends and whether Belmont still kept in touch with them. Belmont explained that Leno was now the assistant to the mayor of Kostul, and he assumed everyone else was busy with their own lives as well. As for himself, he joked that he was still the same as always, while showing off his bandaged fingers as his battle scars. After the Hexel incident, the kingdom's knights had investigated the case. As the commander of the knights, Marcos already knew Belmont had been involved, which was why he had waited for him at the entrance to the noble district of the royal capital. Marcos admitted that if he hadn't done that, Belmont would have kept avoiding him. Belmont replied that hearing him speak so formally gave him goosebumps, but confessed that he simply didn't feel worthy of facing him after everything he had become. Marcos told him that his subordinates had reported how hard Belmont had worked to solve the case, and that he had acted with honor. Speaking quietly, he added that Belmont shouldn't worry about silly things like whether he deserved to face him or not. Those straightforward words left Belmont feeling embarrassed. While he had spent the last 10 years constantly hearing Marcos's name, Marcos had gone almost an entire decade without seeing him, yet still welcomed him with such warmth. Belmont smiled bitterly and said that life really was ironic. When Marcos asked what he meant, Belmont answered that if they had met again sooner, he probably would have devoted his life to serving him. Marcos immediately dismissed the idea, telling him not to say such foolish things because his life belonged to him alone. Belmont teased him by asking if that was really something a knight should say. He couldn't help laughing, since it sounded exactly like something Marcos would say, even though a knight's duty was supposed to be risking his life for the kingdom and its people. Belmont suggested they talk again once the commander had some free time, promising that this time he wouldn't make him wait another 10 years. Waving goodbye, he turned around and began walking away. As Belmont left, Marcos called out to him one last time, reminding him not to do anything he would be ashamed of, quoting one of the Brotherhood's old rules. Feeling that familiar weight in his heart, Belmont answered exactly as he had 10 years ago, accepted the reminder, and said his final goodbye without making any promises about when they would meet again. Just then, Elaine Gatnus quietly joined the group, the youngest member of the Six Tongues, and one of its brightest talents. She had played a vital role in stopping the spread of Hexel. With a suspicious smile, she told Belmont that she already knew he and Commander Marcos knew each other, but she had never imagined they were that close. She also pointed out that their success wasn't entirely their own. They had been able to take advantage of Belmont's preparations after he infiltrated infiltrated first, and, whether she liked it or not, they had ended up relying on the knight's strength. Belmont replied that there was no reason to be upset about that. Thanks to their cooperation, the worst thing they had lost was the use of his fingers. He was sure the chief would judge the results fairly, no matter whose help they had accepted. Helene asked if he was suggesting that she doubted the chief's judgment. Belmont quickly denied it, but warned her that if she became too obsessed with seeing the knights as enemies, it would eventually come back to hurt her. He reminded her that even though their methods were different, both the Six Tongues and the knights were ultimately fighting for the same goal. Helene refused to listen. Seemingly reminded of a certain knight she deeply disliked, she dismissed Belmont's words as nothing more than a bad joke. Belmont decided not to argue any further. Somehow, he felt that Helene's own exceptional talent would eventually lead her into hardship, and when that day came, she might finally understand just how formidable the commander of the Six Tongues truly was. As for Belmont himself, he quietly reminded himself that even if he still didn't feel worthy of facing the commander, he had no intention of ever doing something he would be ashamed of. Just like those knights who carried the same flaws and burdens, he simply didn't know how to live any other way.
It is because of this mutual affection they have that it is not hard for me to believe Russell can get Marcus's help through Belmont. But if that did not happen, I wonder what the heck could have happened for the second strongest person in the kingdom to be an enemy now. But those have been all my comments so far. Unfortunately, the author has released an episode again, exactly episode 28. Episode 28 was an absolute beast, and I feel like it finally made up for the things I didn't like about 26 and 27. I am talking about the revelations that happened here, which I will now discuss in detail in my first impressions. To be honest, I am amazed at how the author starts off with the revelation that Marcus is on the level of Halibel, Cecilus, and the Mad Prince. Perhaps not many people know this, but if he is not included in the ranking of the strongest, it is because Reinhard exists. Personally, I knew Marcus was very strong, but this strong? Even I didn't expect it. There are side stories that tell us how Marcus fights against Roswal and Wallachian soldiers, and while I would love to tell you how this happens, I am sorry to say that it won't be possible, because I have a lot of work and many pending videos to make, perhaps in the future. The episode consisted of a one-sided beatdown of Heinkel by Marcus. In fact, something that I feel will be completely lost on the casual reader is the contempt Marcus feels for Heinkel, which is something much better understood if you read the side stories, but I am sure that if you only read the main novel, you won't understand much. Don't worry though, I will discuss the most important references so that you can understand it too. You see, Marcus was always a prodigy, and even when he joined the Royal Guard, he could only be defeated by Wilhelm, who at that time already showed respect for his strength, and even predicted a bright future for him, as mentioned today in the episode. It seems that defeat at Wilhelm's hands also left a deep mark on him, and later finding out that the man who humiliated him had a son, well, let's just say his attitude toward Heinkel was already bad even before he met him. And even when he did meet him, he saved Heinkel's life, when Heinkel wet himself on his first mission, and Marcus had to help him, so I imagine he must have been disappointed that the son of the man who defeated him was so weak. But it doesn't end there, because a problem would soon arise. The problem is that Marcus began to feel that the army wasn't really helping the people, and after seeing how he was used to suppress the population, instead of solving social problems, he decided to stop serving the kingdom. What I am going to say now is not completely confirmed, but Marcus's father died serving the nation and saving lives during the attack of the previous Archbishop of Pride, so I imagine Marcus felt somewhat disappointed that his father gave his life for a government that he now feels is not worth it. Because of this, he would leave the army in those days and join a brotherhood that practiced its own kind of justice, so to speak. That is when the events of the oldest novel featuring the current Roswal would take place, a novel where Roswal would meet a young Russell and a young Marcus. While all this was happening, Heinkel was the one tasked with trying to convince him to return to the army. If we remember, Marcus didn't think very highly of him, and he thought even less of him now that Heinkel was the one sent to convince him to return to a place he considered inefficient, so his contempt for Heinkel only kept growing. It surely grew even more when Marcus later met Theresia and fell in love with her, as seeing the son of the woman he loved must have made him uncomfortable at all times. In short, Heinkel and Marcus were never meant to get along, not only because they are incompatible, but also because of the circumstances. Now let's return to today's episode. Eventually, Marcus would reveal that he is here on a mission where he was tasked with rescuing Felt and Amelia, and right upon arrival, he sees that the guy who always ruined everything in the army is on the exact same mission. Since he has a terrible opinion of him, he gets angry and unleashes his latent rage against the man he believes is going to endanger the mission he was just assigned. Now that you have all this context, you can kind of understand why Marcus went overboard with Heinkel today. Mind you, I'm not justifying him, I'm just telling you what went on behind the scenes between them. And the funny thing is that even with everything I'm telling you, believe me, if you read the story of these two, you would understand that I was very, very generous with how well they got along. but that is something you only understand after reading their novels. Something I must admit I thought was brilliant is how the author narrated everything going through Heinkel's mind during the beatdown he was receiving. Honestly, I love how the author shows Heinkel's thoughts regarding his life and the injustices he has suffered. For example, it hurts him that someone as blessed as Marcus tells him that Heinkel didn't try hard as a knight. I know that in the eyes of the average viewer, Heinkel is lazy and weak. But believe me, even though Heinkel became an alcoholic, he never neglected his training, and we have proof that he was someone very disciplined, dedicating himself to the sword from a very young age. I should clarify that the story does not glorify Heinkel's victim mentality, as Marcus himself brings him back down to earth by telling him that despite the bad circumstances, he chose to become an unbearable person. Marcus then proceeds to beat Heinkel in every possible way, while Filare and Felt try to intervene for him. Despite the repeated beating, I must admit the author managed to make today's beatdown interesting. It is said that although Heinkel was truly thrashed, Reinhard's father still managed to protect the left side of his body. What was on the left side of Heinkel's body? Well, it was where he kept his sword, and because Marcus hadn't broken that part of his body, the giant didn't stop being merciless with him. Then something would happen that improves Heinkel's resolve today. Remember how Filare has been trying to boost Heinkel's confidence through the act of being a knight? Well, as Heinkel searched for the strength to get back up today, he remembered the things Filare made him feel, and he remembered that he still wants to be a knight. Seeing that question circulate in his mind at his worst moment is a damn interesting moment. On top of that, this moment ends with him remembering 3 people in his mind, heart, and soul to give himself courage. In his mind, he remembers his current lady Filare. In his heart, he remembers Reinhard, and in his soul, he remembers his wife Luana. Unfortunately, this power-up wasn't enough, and Heinkel was incapacitated once again by Marcus. While he was defenseless, Filora stepped in and confessed her crimes to the commanding general. At the same time, Amelia appeared, having left her room thanks to Felt's actions. To be honest, as soon as Amelia comes out with Ram and they talk to Marcus to clear up the misunderstanding, I don't have much to add to that. However, I did find it very funny to see how Marcus tries to deny that he is friends with Roswal, and it's funny because Roswal is always looking for him and treating him with familiarity, while Marcus just wants to stay away from him. What I am going to show you now happens right on the day Felix's master died, and it narrates an unexpected meeting Marcus had with Roswal.
A voice congratulated Marcos, commenting that he had heard that, thanks to his latest merit, he had risen from a simple private soldier to a position with rank. Marcos asked him if he thought that made him happy, and clarified that he had not gone there to hear sarcasm. The other person reacted with exaggerated theatricality, mockingly pointing out how scared he was, and noting that Marcos's old rabid dog temperament was still intact, doubting whether he had softened up or had become more rigid, although he concluded that the latter he had been right from the beginning. When Marcos announced that he was leaving, his interlocutor asked him to wait and rebuked him for not understanding jokes, reminding him that they were old acquaintances and that Russell had not even come when called, urging him to stay a bit to relive old times. Marcos noted that the other person had not changed in how stubborn he was either, and questioned him about why he did not allow himself to be sad, even if just a little. The other person reacted with surprise at the mention of sadness and denied such nonsense with laughter, assuring that it was actually a toast. Marcos doubtfully asked what he meant by a toast, and his companion explained that it was for his promotion and because he had finally taken revenge for the Great Blue. Facing Marcos's silence, the interlocutor pronounced his name to get his attention, to which Marcos asked him if he was okay with what happened to Mr. Fabulous. Marcos added in a low voice that there were things better left unsaid. The companion then reminded him that it had been his friend who avenged Mr. Garrich, and that in that scene there was also that girl, Mr. Garrich's beloved disciple. Marcos confirmed his words, admitting that if she had not been there, incalculable damage could have happened. The other person claimed that he would have fixed it somehow, but explained that he did not want to get in the way. When Marcos asked him what exactly he meant by getting in the way, the interlocutor replied that it was obvious he meant getting in the way of the revenge, firmly maintaining that the revenge for the master had to be fulfilled by his student, and reiterating that for that very reason it was a toast to the future Blue. With those final words, the slight clinking of glasses resonated briefly inside the venue.
Another interesting revelation is the one Filare gives when she heals Heinkel in the area where magic was weakened. She says that restriction is the least of her worries, and doesn't affect her power called sacrament, which is interesting because I think it could be that this power is a kind of curse, like the Immortal King's sacrament ability that Felix possesses. Or it might be a technique developed by a very talented human who ended up breaking the limits of magic, so to speak. For example, we know the short-range teleportation technique used by the Gluttony Archbishops is actually something made by a very skilled human, and the Archbishops just stole it. So it would be funny if Filore's technique follows a similar principle. But by far the most curious thing is that Heinkel detects the distinct nature of this magic and holds on to a small hope that this power will wake his wife. Since this arc seems to be focused on the Estrellas, I believe Luana waking up is imminent. Rather, I am sorry for the delay in uploading this, but right now I have some health issues that make it difficult for me to sit down and make videos on my own. I hope you can understand. And remember that if you want to support the channel, you can always do it through a membership. And if not, a like and a comment help like you have no idea. But now, yes, I bid you farewell.